let's give a great round of applause to a great governor, a champion of progressive and common sense policies in the West, Governor Brian Schweitzer.
Well, thank you. Welcome to Missoula. Welcome to Montana. It's been the history of this place, boom and bust, but remember, for 10,000 years, the people that lived here and coexisted here, they were able to hand this place along to the next generation in better shape than they found it. And in 150 years, we've screwed up almost the whole state. So that's why we think in Montana it's not a bad idea that we renew and rejuvenate the rest of the country with good ideas. And so in addition to providing a water supply for the entire country, we think high in the Rocky Mountains we can develop policy that's good for this entire country. We think it's time that we learn a little something from the people who've lived in this place the longest. You know, the folks who occupied Montana for 10,000 years, the Kootenai and the Salish and the Crow, the Cheyenne, the Blackfeet, the Sioux, Cheyenne, they had a notion about leadership. And one of the notions they had about leadership is they respected the people who had occupied this place the longest, the elders. Now, they had elected officials, just like we do, the middle-aged fire and tiger kind of guys, but the ones they respected the most, and still do, are their elders, because they have so many life experiences. And then they had another notion about leadership, and it's something that we could all learn. Before they made decisions, before they decided what they were going to do as a tribe or as a clan, they would consider the consequences not just for the next generation or for our grandchildren. You know, politicians are always talking about our grandchildren. No, they considered the consequences for 7 generations. Can you imagine what this country would look like today if we had leaders 7 generations ago that would have considered this generation? And can you imagine what we would be doing in Montana and across the West if we considered the next generations all the way to 7 generations? Now, Butte, Montana, at the headwaters of all of this business, is the largest Superfund site in the United States. We now have 380 copper miners who are mining the same amount as 25,000 copper miners in 1920. And we understand who the owners are. We can follow the liability chain pretty easy here, because the Anaconda Company owned this big copper mine and they destroyed the Clark Fork Basin all the way down to Milltown. And then they sold to Arco, and when Arco bought the assets, they also bought the liabilities. And then more recently, and this is the good news, Arco has sold to our what we now call our rich English uncle, British Petroleum. And so when they bought the assets, they also bought the liabilities, and on their books was about $500 million to clean up the Clark Fork. That's $500 million that will employ people for a generation to clean up the messes of the previous 75 years. It's $500 million that will restore the Clark Fork River so that fish now will be able to spawn all the way upstream. It's $500 million so that the water along the Clark Fork all the way to Silver Bow Creek and beyond will now be drinkable, and fish will now be living in that river. Now, that's just one example in Montana. We have examples all across Montana where communities are pulling together, and sometimes it's federal dollars, sometimes it's state dollars, sometimes it's community dollars and private dollars, but we're finding out that the restoration economy will be and is every bit as big as the mining and lumber industries were during their heyday. All across Montana, we can give you examples of what is to come. We've already invested $34 million through our legislature, and we may be the only state in the country that will have a full-time position that's in charge of restoration of Montana's economy. But you know how the legislators are. They're pesky. And I'm being charitable. And if you're going to sell an idea to them, it has to be about dollars and cents. And if you go to them and you say, oh, it's the right thing to do, oh yeah, there's a lot of other things. if you tell them the dollars and cents, if you explain to them how many jobs are created in the restoration economy, how many companies from around the world would come to Montana to ply their wares, how many families can have a sustainable living wage restoring Montana's economy instead of just tearing into the side of the mountain, then they'll start listening. And so that's why every year, every quarter, when we announce Montana's economy, and of course I mentioned to Congressman Williams here a little earlier that times are pretty good, you know, since we've been able to cut so many taxes and we have the largest surplus in history and the greatest number of new jobs, and we were able to invest more in education and health care, and he said to me, rightfully so, "You're a lucky son of a bitch." And that is true. But in politics, it is better to be lucky than good, and we'll take it. We'll take it however we can get it. But the bottom line is, if I can show the legislators in Montana how many dollars and how many jobs are associated with the restoration economy, they will be lined up in the hall to vote for new initiatives for restoration in Montana's economy. And so that's why our Labor Department, every quarter when we announce these great numbers that we have in Montana, lowest unemployment and new jobs at highest wages, we're not going to just talk about the agricultural jobs and the mining jobs and the oil jobs and the tech jobs and the service jobs. From now on in Montana, we'll be the first state in America, we're going to announce the number of jobs that we've created in the restoration economy.